So this time of year, any sensible grizzly bear is in its den. So we're not going to be able to see them, but I'd like to show you some of the photos and video that I got the last few years, and just for your enjoyment. These particular instances, it's interesting looking back. Some of the most satisfying situations where I've seen a bear is when, and taken video or some shots, are when they weren't aware of my presence. I was either far enough away or hidden or something like that. They didn't know I was there and went about doing whatever grizzly bears do. There's 3 instances here. The first one, I had heard through a friend that there was a tree planting crew that had run across a female, a sow with 3 cubs. She was, they'll work their way up the mountain, separated 100 meters or so, and that she was coming down in between the workers, and so they decided to get off the mountainside before there was an incident. So I went up to see if I could find her. This was the middle of September. They are working their way up the mountainsides, following the huckleberry crop, and then they get into intense feeding for a couple months until hibernation, and so they're preoccupied, and so it's a good time to watch them. They're oftentimes out in the open, and as long as you stay far enough away, they don't pay any attention to you. As you can see, I was taking this video is looking over the brow of a hill. The road went down and dipped, and there was a dip big enough to hide a vehicle and ourselves, and so I was able to stand and look over the brow of a hill and watch her, and she couldn't see us. And so look at what she's doing. She's flopping herself in a mud puddle. The little guys are sacked out on the road. They're eating. They're going about their business. They're checking the wind regularly to see if there's anything, other bears around, or any dangers at all. She eventually became aware of me because she came up the hill towards me, and then saw me and turned around and left. But while she was unaware of my presence, I got a little bit of a window into her behavior and the behavior of her cubs. It was really quite special. A short while later, I was up in the same hillside, same bear, same 3 cubs, but it was further up the mountainside, up maybe 3-4 kilometers higher. This was toward the end of the afternoon. The light was fading, and myself and 2 others, and we had seen movement, and so we stopped. The vehicle got out, and we're looking over the road down into this depression. And again, she didn't know we were there, and so this is probably some of the most special footage that I have of grizzly cubs. They just piled up and sacked out. They're busy, and Mom was busy browsing and grazing, trying to get food and fatten herself up. But the little guys, it was bedtime, so they all sacked out in a pile. Again, as soon as they became aware of us, and which they did later, they all got up and moved on, and so we unfortunately interrupted that. But it was a really special situation. In the spring, when the grizzly bears come out of their dens, of course they're hungry. It takes 3 weeks or so before their systems get out of hibernation mode and into normal eating and fattening up mode. And so they look for fresh vegetation to gorge on. They're hungry, and they got to get their system going again. And so they come, typically their dens are at altitude, they're up high. And so they'll come down the valleys and preferably look for a swampy valley bottom where there's fresh greens and roots and all kinds of things that they can eat. And there's a spot like that not too far from Nelson. And during the spring, there might be 4 or 5 family groups of grizzly bears in that area. They kind of keep to themselves, and it's just fun to watch. So I had seen this sow and 3 cubs. The cubs were the same size as her, so second year, maybe third year cubs. They'd be soon off on their own. And we saw them in a field. So we went a little bit further down, and there was a grove of trees with a track through it that opened onto this field. So we got our gear and went through and came to the edge of the trees looking out into this field. And here were these 4 bears. They were 125, 150 meters away. They didn't see us, they couldn't smell us. And so they went about their business. It was, the sun was setting behind them. So the light was kind of turning into something special, and then a mist started rising from the grass. It was truly one of these magical moments, and you think, how could this get any better? But then it did. 2 of the young bears started wrestling. We watched them for maybe 15 or close to 20 minutes. It was getting dark, the light was disappearing, and they were wrestling, and if we had been close, we would have heard the grunting and slapping and growling at each other like mammals do when they play fight. But they were too far away, we couldn't hear that, but we could see them, and they were vigorous. So what I've done is I didn't have any video footage of this. I had a series of 6, 7 shots taken in quick sequence that you put together as a time lapse and give you an idea of what they were doing. And that was an unbelievably beautiful moment to watch. What happened was that there were some people on the highway that stopped and looked, and the bears became aware of someone else watching, and so the mom gathered up all the cubs, and then they went up into the bush up to our left. So that was a real special evening. So it's kind of thinking back, like and this is something to think about. If you see a grizzly bear at a distance and they're not aware of you, just stay there. Stay hidden, stay out of sight, and see what happens. You might see things that you will not see otherwise. It's really worthwhile doing, because sure enough, once they become aware of you, they'll just trundle off into the bush. So you'll miss anything anyways. So it's not to say that sometimes they don't tolerate your presence, but most of the time when you come across them and you see them, they see you, they just go off into the bush. And so if they don't know you're there, just stay back and watch. You can't get the shots where you can count the hairs on their back. It's too far away. But you can see something, and maybe video or photos of really special situations that are really beautiful. Some technical details of those grizzly shots. The grizzly on the mountainside with the videos, I had a K3, a Pentax K3 with a Sigma 500f 4.5 lens in movie mode, and then I had some stills as well. I used a tripod with a gimbal to stabilize things, and was able to get some nice shots. When with the grizzlies wrestling, I had the K3 and also the Pentax 300mm f4 lens prime, and I was using a monopod with a gimbal. One of these days I'll show you all those things, and so you see what I use. But that's what I was using in those times. So see you next time.